Arthur Rankin Jr. and Jules Bass. In 1955, the two first met while working at ABC making TV commercials, with Rankin as art director and Bass as a writer. The two worked really well together, and in 1960 founded Videocraft, where they went on to produce several TV series and specials. They both had a passion for storytelling and leave behind a legacy of cult classic animated films. But if you clicked on this video, you probably recognize them for this.
Rudolph the red-nosed reindeer.
Or this.
Frosty the Snowman.
Or maybe even this.
Santa Claus is coming to town.
Yep, these two have practically become synonymous with the holiday season. People of all generations have most likely grown up with one or more of their Christmas specials, and it's easy to see why they've lasted so long. Despite the technical aspects being very much of their time, the stories and characters are very timeless and memorable. Now, a lot of us are probably familiar with the big three specials of Rudolph, Frosty, and Santa Claus. But amazingly, Rankin and Bass produced 18 holiday specials between 1964 and 1985. Most of these I had never seen or even heard of, so I figured it might be fun to go through all these specials and offer my thoughts on them, revisiting the classics that everyone knows and discovering some hidden gems that people should know. So, pull up an ice block and lend an ear. This is every Rankin Bass Christmas movie. Our first entry is Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, produced by Rankin and Bass and directed by Larry Romer. It was based on the 1949 song by Johnny Marks, which itself was based on the book by Robert L. May. If you know the song, you know the story. Donner and his wife have given birth to a reindeer named Rudolph, but because his birth was sponsored by General Electric, he's born with a bright red nose. Hell, you could even say it glows. As he grows up, he's encouraged to cover it, and when it finally gets revealed, he is bullied mercilessly for it. Even his own parents are embarrassed by him. Not wanting to deal with their abuse anymore, he runs away and meets up with Hermie, an elf who wants to quit making toys in order to become a dentist. The two of them bond over being misfits and set off on their own, coming across colorful characters, escaping an abominable snowman, discovering an island of forgotten toys, and eventually, Rudolph makes his way back to the North Pole so he can help guide Santa through the storm of the century. So as you can tell, the special expands on the story of the song, adding several new characters and plot lines. The teleplay was done by Romeo Muller, who admitted he wanted the special to more closely follow the book, but he couldn't find a copy. That is not a joke. Honestly, I feel like the right call was made in developing a more original story, because so many aspects of the special have become memorable and iconic. The set pieces and the characters feel like natural extensions of the song, and they all tie back into the message of self-acceptance and owning your differences. The voice actors all do great, the songs are pretty cute. The animation, which is done by Mom Productions in Tokyo, does admittedly look a bit janky, but it still retains a sort of dated charm, and if nothing else, it's impressive to see not only what they were able to do on such a small budget, but also how far stop motion has come over the years. The special released on NBC in 1964 and is still being shown to this day, making it the longest running Christmas special in the US. And it's easy to see why this became a classic. It's a very cute, easy special to watch with lovable characters and a nice message. You've all seen it several times, you'll see it several more. It may not be perfect, but it's a timeless classic that's gone down in history. Following the success of Rudolph, Rankin Bass released Cricket on the Hearth in 1967. Based on the Charles Dickens story of the same name, this special is about a cricket named Crockett, voiced by Roddy McDowall, who befriends a poor toy maker and his daughter and must help them overcome a series of tragedies. I wasn't all that familiar with this story, and from what I've read, it's overlooked among Charles Dickens' catalog. So I can't exactly judge it as an adaptation, but I couldn't really do that with Rudolph either. So how is it as a standalone special? Not that good. Some of the animation is kind of nice, some of the songs were alright, and the voice actors did a solid job, but there wasn't much about this special that was holding my attention. It feels very slow, overly sad in parts, and those scenes are juxtaposed by song sequences that are just trying to beat the sappy into you. And then the second half gets really weird and all over the place. Like, there's a wedding proposal by the dickish toy shop owner, there's a reveal about the supposed dead love interest, there's a cat in a dress. I was just pretty bored by this one, and I can't see myself ever watching it again after this video. Maybe the original story is better, I have have no idea, but as a special on its own, it was just really dull. In 1968, Rankin Bass returned to stop motion with The Little Drummer Boy, a 25-minute special based off the song of the same name. And much like Rudolph, the special does well in fleshing out the lyrics of the song into a proper story. A young boy named Aaron is gifted a drum by his parents that has the power to make his farm animals dance around. Sadly, his parents are killed, and Aaron and his animals flee their home until they're captured by Ben Haramed and forced to be part of his traveling circus. Can you tell these guys really liked Pinocchio? He earns his freedom and makes his way to the Nativity of Jesus, where, in a desperate attempt to save the life of his lamb, he plays a song for the baby and Aaron is filled with joy. It's a very simple story, but the simplicity is kind of part of the charm. The song Little Drummer Boy is such a classic and has so many renditions of it. Hell, when I was in Catholic school, I remember my class performing it for one of our Christmas pageants. Fortunately, that footage was lost in the fire. The point is, the song doesn't need much in the way of expansion, and what they do with this special is perfectly fine. I thought it was kind of interesting seeing this kid have so much hatred towards humanity. The scene of his parents' death was surprisingly kind of dark, and seeing how he ends up and how he regains that joy is the right amount of heartwarming. The music and voice acting are of course great, and the animation is what you'd expect. Although I should bring up, since I forgot to talk about it in the Rudolph section, with a lot of these HD restorations, in trying to smooth out the animation, it does leave a lot of errors and some ghost frames. Like when you convert something to 60 FPS and it doesn't look quite right. But to be fair, this movie has always had problems with restoration due to the original 35mm negative going missing. But if you can look past some of the technical hiccups, I'd say it's worth a watch. It's short, charming, and it's pretty solid. I don't think this one needs much of an introduction. Frosty the Snowman was released in 1969 based on the song by Walter E. Rollins and Steve Nelson and sits alongside Rudolph as a bona fide classic. Narrated by comedian Jimmy Durant in one of his last roles, the special sees a group of schoolchildren building a snowman named Frosty who magically comes to life when an evil magician's top hat gets placed on his head. But because global warming's a bitch, it's up to one little girl named Karen to help get Frosty to the North Pole before he melts, while also steering clear of the evil magician Mr. Hinkle. The special is just designed to put you in a good mood. It originally aired after A Charlie Brown Christmas, with both getting really high praise. And while Charlie Brown is probably a better movie altogether, Frosty is just such a fun, happy little special. The animation, while very simple, is very cute and colorful. Rankin Bass wanted to make the world and characters look like a Christmas card, so they hired Mad Magazine and greeting card artist Paul Coker Jr. to do the character design in the background, while the animation was produced by Mushi Productions in Japan. It's another very simple story, it has a nice sense of childlike wonder, and Frosty is just such a nice guy. And Jackie Vernon's performance is, ironically, very warm and innocent. It's not perfect by any means. The bouncy sound effects can get a bit much. In fact, my fiance Anne compared it to Johnny Test. And there's a lot about the story that you just kind of have to accept. But like I said, it's such a cute, fun little special that it's easier to overlook some of the lesser elements. Definitely worth revisiting. Santa Claus is Coming to Town was released in 1970 and is every bit as charming and classic as Rudolph and Frosty. Romeo Muller once again pulls inspiration from the song by J. Fred Coots and Haven Gillespie, as well as the story of St. Nicholas to deliver the origin of Santa Claus and several Christmas-related traditions. Told by a mailman voiced by Tom Holland, The special follows young Kris Kringle, who makes it his mission to bring toys and happiness to the children of Sombertown, much to the dismay of the evil Burgermeister Meisterburger. His efforts are met with more and more pushback from the mayor until finally he is declared an outlaw and has to set up shop in the North Pole. I like the framing device of mailman Slotface using his story as a way to answer kids' questions about Santa, and the fact that the kids are literally portrayed through their letters. I like the mean and glum atmosphere being contrasted by Chris's endless desire to do good. The characters are also memorable, the voice acting was great, the songs are all very catchy. Some of the animation can get a little creepy, like whenever Chris gets scared and his eyes go super big. Also, I thought the ending was hilarious where they explained that the Burgermeisters died and everyone forgot about them, and that's how Santa was no longer an outlaw. Also, it's been years since I watched this, and I remember the Winter Warlock being a much bigger antagonist. And even though his turn seems kind of quick and he kind of fades into the background, the One Foot in Front of the Other song is still a banger. I don't have much else to add about this one. It's another stop motion classic. Simple as. 'Twas the Night Before Christmas, released in '74, based on the poem by Clement Clarke Moore. Follows two families on Christmas, stirring in their house. One a clockmaker named Joshua, the other a mouse. The people of Junctionville's letters to Santa are being returned, leaving everyone sad and a little concerned. An anonymous letter left Santa bitter and pissed, by the author claiming that he doesn't exist. The mouse's son Albert admits he doesn't believe, and after making amends, Joshua reveals a trick up his sleeve. He wants to build a special clock that will play a special song, to make it up to Santa so he won't pass them along. The song plays, all's forgiven, the town is absolved, and Albert's crisis of faith is officially resolved. It's a fine little short, it tells its story well, it's got a nice message with songs that are swell. The art designer from Frosty returns for this piece, and the charm of the animation truly doesn't cease. It's not my favorite special, but I'd say it's worth a watch. And if you found these rhymes obnoxious, then you can suck my balls, because this was so much more difficult than it sounded. I was on Rhyme Zone for like 40 minutes trying to...
Louder, come on, sing, come on! Yes, come on, louder!
The Year Without a Santa Claus was released in 1974 based on the children's book by Phyllis McGinley, and is quite possibly the best special in this lineup. The story sees Santa, played once again by Mickey Rooney, waking up with not only a bad cold, but a strong fear that people don't care about him or believe in him anymore. He ultimately decides to take a year off to rest, and it's up to Mrs. Claus and elves Jingle and Jangle to pull Santa out of his funk and prove to him that people do still care, and that Christmas spirit is still in the air. There is so much I like about this. First off, I found the story to be really good and kind of touching in parts. This plays like an unofficial sequel to Santa Claus is Coming to Town, and it feels like a natural progression of that character, which is kind of sad. Seeing how optimistic and full of life that Santa was, even as all these terrible things were happening to him, going from that to very disillusioned and numb is pretty grim, but understandable for a Santa who's been doing this for a while in a world that's been kind of taking him for granted. And it's very satisfying not only seeing the rest of the world learn to appreciate Santa, but seeing the joy and energy return to Santa in the final moments. The special does have a lot of shenanigans involving the two elves making their way to the city, losing their reindeer after dressing him up like a dog, and trying to convince everyone that they're real. The special is very funny and has a lot of great moments. And the ones who steal the show are, of course, the Miser Brothers. And it's very weird because the posters for this special make it seem like they're more involved and play a bigger role, but they don't even properly show up until the last third. But they make a big impression. Their designs are great, their personalities are fun, their rivalry is hilarious, and of course, they sing that catchy as hell song.
I'm Mr. White Christmas. I'm Mr. Snow.
I'm Mr. Heat Blister. I'm Mr. 101.
Friends call me Snow Miser. Whatever I touch
Starts to melt in my clutch. I'm too much.
These guys were so memorable and such a highlight that not only did they get their own sequel, but also a live-action remake?
I'm Mr. Green Christmas. I'm Mr. Sun. I'm Mr. Heat Blister. I'm Mr. 101.
I'm gonna have to add this to the slate next year, aren't I? Anyway, the special is a lot of fun, the songs are great, and the animation is the best it's been so far. It was just all around a great time. The The First Christmas, the story of the first Christmas snow, was a very long and redundant title. It was released in 1975, narrated by Angela Lansbury, and is about a shepherd boy who loses his eyesight and gets taken in by these nuns. He wishes to see snowfall, and when his wish comes true, his sight comes back. It's very much like Drummer Boy in the sense that it's a much smaller, simpler, low-key story, and it works perfectly fine for what it's doing. The only noteworthy thing I could comment on was the audio. I don't know if this was an issue in restoration, but all the dialogue is weirdly recorded, so that whenever the characters use words that have S in them, it sounds really distorted. Other than that, I thought the movie was fine. 1976 saw Rankin Bass release 3 sequels to 3 of their previous classics, the first of which being Frosty's Winter Wonderland, a movie in which Frosty returns after several years to play with the children, who all look different than before, and they decide to build him a wife so that he won't be so lonely when they aren't there. Also, Jack Frost is there and gets jealous because the children aren't drawing fan art of him, but then he's made the best man at their wedding and they all become friends. Damn, Parson Brown is a fucking bigot, isn't he? This is a huge injustice to the LGBTS community. This movie, on top of just being kind of boring and not very well plotted out, left me with a lot of questions. Like, why does Frosty never acknowledge that Karen isn't there anymore, or that all the children look different? What exactly are the mechanics of bringing snow creatures to life? Mr. Hinkle's hat made sense because it was actually magic, but then Frosty brings his wife Crystal to life with a bouquet of flowers because something the power of love. And when Frosty gets his hat stolen and loses consciousness, he comes back when Crystal gives him a boutonniere, but it's not a magic boutonniere, it's just regular snow. So maybe snow people are brought to life by the power of magic or love. But then the preacher gets brought to life when they place a Bible in his hand. So does God have something to do with this now? Does the item that brings the snow person to life have any significance? And most importantly, after the wedding, there's a vision of Frosty and Crystal playing with the little snow children. So does Frosty fuck now? Do the children have to be built? Do the genitals have to be built? When Crystal's water breaks, would ice cubes fall out? These are the questions I'm focused on because the rest of the movie was kind of lame. I'd just say stick to the original. Much like Frosty, Rudolph has had several sequels over the years. Like this one from 2001, where he gets called back to the island of misfit toys at the request of a talking kite with a face.
Try the Christmas Town snowball. First castle on your left.
Hello, I'm Spots!
Also, Jamie Lee Curtis is a Russian hippo who fixes things. And I'm not a furry, but...
Look out! I think Moto likes you.
I like 'em big. I like 'em chunky. I like 'em big. I like 'em plumpy.
But the first Rudolph sequel was Rudolph Shiny New Year. In this one, the New Year's baby, Happy, has run away from home after being bullied for his big ears. And as someone with big ears, you have my sympathy. Now Rudolph must team up with a caveman, a knight, and Frank Benjamin to search the archipelago of last year's, those being the islands that New Year's figures retire to each year, and bring Happy back before midnight. As you can tell, this is a pretty weird movie, but I don't know, I was kinda into it. It does feel very all over the place. It seems like they had a bunch of ideas for different shorts and then threw them all into one sequel. But I think they all flow together pretty believably. I like the mechanics and the lore they provide for New Year's, although the idea of someone living out a whole life in 1 year and then being frozen in a single age sounds terrifying. I thought the connection between Rudolph and Happy and their oddities was really sweet. The animation was really nice and the variety of locations and sets is pretty impressive. I can't imagine I'm gonna revisit this one, especially since it doesn't have Mommy in it, but for what it is, it was pretty cute. Next up is The Little Drummer Boy Book 2, which, as the title suggests, follows up from the 1968 Little Drummer Boy special and sees Aaron and his animals having to protect a bunch of silver bells made by Simeon to play in Christ's honor from a group of greedy tax collectors. There isn't that much to say about this one. It's every bit as low-key and charming as the first one. There is a bit more boisterous humor with the tax collector Brutus. I swear, if you took a shot every time he yells "Play-Doh, you fool," you'd probably be dead by the end of the special. The animation doesn't feel as polished as the first one. The story wasn't as engaging as the first one, but it was mostly just fine.
I will guide you now, Nestor.
That voice. Not Tilly.
Nestor the Long-Eared Christmas Donkey was released in 1977 and, as you probably guessed, follows a little donkey who is constantly made fun of for his long ears, who, through a series of events, ends up carrying Mary to Bethlehem so she can give birth to Jesus. Again, much like Drummer Boy 2, I don't have much to say about this one. It's serviceably cute and sad, Nestor is adorable, some of the animation is noticeably shakier, but for the most part it's fine. Again, sorry if I'm sounding like a broken record, but a lot of these specials are just fine. Not to say that they're bad, they just aren't exactly worth writing home about. The Stingiest Man in Town was released in 1978 and is Rankin Bass's take on Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol. Everyone knows the story to death, there have been hundreds of adaptations of this story, and the criteria of quality tends to be either how close they get to matching the book, or which one offers something unique that stands out amongst other versions. And while I can't speak on the first one, I can definitely say it failed as far as the second is concerned. This isn't a bad movie, and it's a perfectly fine way to introduce your kids to this story, but there's nothing about it that really stands out. The songs are all pretty forgettable, it never reaches the darkness of other adaptations, the heart is there, but again, it just doesn't reach out and grab you that much. I'd still say if you want to introduce your kids to A Christmas Carol, show them the Muppets one. As for this, it's perfectly safe, but ultimately forgettable. It's all led up to this. After 15 years and 4 specials, Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer and Frosty the Snowman have finally joined forces for this feature-length crossover event, Rudolph and Frosty's Christmas in July, released in 1979. I imagine for many Rankin Bass fans, this was their Avengers. Not only were Frosty and Rudolph sharing the screen with their original voice actors reprising their roles, but Shelley Winters reprises her role as Crystal, along with their snow children, which means they canonically fucked. Mickey Rooney once again returns as Santa Claus. Jack Frost from Winter Wonderland is back, played once again by Paul Frees. Even that whale with the throbbing clock from Rudolph's New Year makes an appearance. If they brought in the Miser Brothers, the Little Drummer Boy, and Nestor, this would be the most ambitious crossover on the planet, no questions asked. But just having these characters together is one thing. Is the story any good? I mean, no, it's weird. So apparently, before the events of Santa Claus is Coming to Town, the North Pole was ruled by an evil wizard named Winterbolt, which is weird considering they already had a winter-themed wizard, but whatever. Eventually, he gets put into a deep sleep by the Queen of the Northern Lights, Lady Boreal, but it only lasts while her human form is alive. So before she dies, she gives her remaining magic to Rudolph, which causes his nose to glow, urging him to only use it for good. Fast forward several years, and Winterbolt has hatched a plan to destroy Rudolph, Frosty, and Santa by tricking them into going to a circus in the middle of July and being part of the act. He gives Frosty and his family magic amulets that will keep them frozen until the fireworks finish. He unleashes a storm that causes Santa to be late picking them up, and he has Rudolph framed for stealing money from the circus, which causes his nose to go out and everyone to stop talking to him. He even tricks Frosty into giving him his magic hat. Eventually, everything gets resolved, Rudolph's magic is restored, the wizard turns into a tree, which is horrifying. Frosty and his family die for a minute, and then Jack Frost shows up and gives them a blowjob, and then they come back to life. And now the animals in the circus can fly.
What the hell was that?
So, yeah, the story is kind of insane and nonsensical and all over the place, but I'll be damned if I wasn't intrigued the whole time. This truly does feel like Rankin Bass throwing everything into a bowl and blending it together, and it is definitely ambitious. I found it kind of interesting how they fleshed out their own universe with the wizard and Lady Boreal, but I kind of wish they incorporated more of Frosty into the backstory to make it feel like a proper crossover. You could have connected Boreal to Frosty by saying she enchanted the hat and that's why it made Frosty come to life. Hell, the rival circus leader kind of looks like Mr. Henkel. You could have just said he got another job as a ringleader and wanted revenge on Frosty. As is, it just feels like a Rudolph movie featuring Frosty. The animation does look pretty solid. Frosty translates surprisingly well to live action. I know it probably doesn't deserve as high a ranking as I'm giving it, but I kind of enjoyed how insane this was. And if for nothing else, it was cool to see Billy May Richards and Jackie Vernon reprise these roles one more time. If you're a fan of Frosty and Rudolph, it's definitely worth your time, and I can't wait for them to show up again in Avengers Doomsday. Jack Frost was released in 1979 and is a Christmas, winter, and Groundhog Day special. A very niche combination of holidays that rarely gets tapped into. And it features Buddy Hackett as a groundhog telling the story of Jack Frost, but a more fuckable version. The story goes that Jack Frost comes down and brings winter to the world, but no one else can see him. So when he gets the hots for a girl in the town of January Junction, he asks Father Winter to make him human until spring. He agrees on the condition that he gets a house, a horse, money, and a wife. He goes down and befriends the girl named Elisa, but not only is she already being courted by a knight, but her town is being ruled by the evil Kubla Kraus. The story is kind of like a mix of Santa Claus is Coming to Town and The Little Mermaid. The only difference is, even after all the bullshit Jack has to deal with, he still doesn't get the girl. The story does have the makings of a classic, and it has a lot of good elements. I really like Jack's character and his arc. While the version from Frosty's Wonderland was a bit more mischievous, this one balances out a bit of playfulness with heart. The animation looked really good. The effects on Jack when he's invisible were pretty cool for the time on a TV budget. The Buddy Hackett groundhog looked like Freddy Fazbear. It does kind of barrel through the resolution, and the ending is kind of abrupt, but other than that, the special was cute, and I'd say it's worth checking out. Pinocchio's Christmas was released in 1980, and it's exactly what it sounds like. It's Pinocchio's first Christmas, and he's trying to earn money to get Geppetto a gift. One of the first projects Rankin worked on after founding Videocraft was a series called The New Adventures of Pinocchio in 1961. And in a way, this feels like a full circle moment for the studio. It's a return to one of the first characters they tackled with a new-ish story and better quality animation. In that regard, it's kind of an interesting piece, but as a special itself, it's nothing really to write home about. I thought it was way too long, kind of boring. There were some funny moments, like when Pinocchio first meets Jiminy Cricket. Also, there's a cool song sequence where Pinocchio talks about how much he loves the good place.
Dancing, let's go dancing. Dancing, let's go dancing. Let's go dancing, 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 dancing.
But overall, this was another very mid special. Not terrible or offensive, just nothing super memorable. Our penultimate special in this lineup is The Leprechaun's Christmas Gold, released in 1981, and it's about a cabin boy who ends up on an island of leprechauns. He stumbles across their hidden gold and has to fend off an evil shape-shifting banshee who is trying to take it. And also Christmas is a part of it somehow. Originally, this was meant to be a St. Patrick's Day special, which would make sense, but ABC pressured them to pivot and make it into a Christmas special. And you can really tell, because Christmas feels like so much of an afterthought in the story. But regardless if it was a Christmas special, a St. Patrick's Day special, a Feast of Our Lady of Guadalupe special, this thing kind of sucked. The story was uninteresting and all over the place. I didn't care about anything that was going on. The characters felt like planks of wood. The special was very much in one ear and out the other. Even as I'm writing this, I'm forgetting about it. And finally, The Life and Adventures of Santa Claus was released in 1985 and is based on the book by L. Frank Baum. A group of immortals, led by the great Ack, gather in the forest. He tells them that Santa Claus is about to die and, in an effort to persuade them into granting him immortality, tells them his story about how he grew up and how he dedicated his life to bringing joy and happiness to the people of the world. I've never read the book this is based on, so I can't judge it as an adaptation. I could tell this was a very simplified version, however. Character motivations feel very simple, plot points and conflicts are resolved very quickly, and for a situation where Santa is faced with death, it still feels very low stakes. As a standalone special and as a Santa Claus origin story, I think I still prefer the simplicity and charm of Santa Claus is Coming to Town, but there is a lot of stuff I kind of liked here. I like how they went for a more fantasy, myth-based angle. It's like if Rankin tried to do Rise of the Guardians. I like the design of the characters and in the world. I thought it was interesting that Ack takes the young Claus on a trip around the world to show them how much we suck, and that's what gives him the motivation to start making toys. The villains were fairly weak and unmemorable. There were moments in the special that kind of dragged. I do appreciate they were going for something a bit different, but like I said, I think Coming to Town will always be a classic. That being said, I thought this was still pretty solid and worth checking out if you're curious. And that does it for this video. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you're curious how I ranked all these specials, my worst to best ranking should be scrolling on the screen right now. Ultimately, I have a lot of appreciation for these specials and the people that made them. Even with the lesser of them, I still respect the craft and the dedication that Rankin and Bass put into them, and how they managed to do a lot with very little. I hope you enjoyed this video, I hope you give some of these specials a watch, and I hope you all have a very Merry Christmas. Until then, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you later.